Chief DeSoto Hay stood on a rise of soft red earth, watching the first light of morning spread across the wide southwest sky. The air was cool, and a gentle wind moved through the desert plants. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the scent of dry sage. This land had been home to his people for generations, and every part of it held memories of celebrations, of stories told by elders, and of quiet evenings around warm fires. It was a place filled with life, meaning, and history. Even with the sunrise, his heart felt heavy. He was a respected leader, admired for his calm judgment and his ability to unite his people. Yet he knew that he was growing older. His daughters, Chumana and Nalan, were now young adults, strong in spirit and smart in thought. They often stood by his side in tribal meetings, offering their ideas and guiding younger members with kindness. He trusted them deeply, but he also understood that the next leader of the tribe would carry great responsibility. The tribe needed someone who could protect their traditions, guide their choices, and maintain harmony with neighboring groups. In recent months, the tribe had noticed new changes around their land. Travelers passed through more often than before. Small settlements were rising in places that once were empty. Different people with different ways of life appeared, sometimes friendly, sometimes confused about the traditions already rooted in this place. The Apache people were cautious but patient, always trying to understand others without losing their own identity. But Chief DeSoto Hay knew that misunderstandings could grow easily if no careful leadership stood between cultures. For many days, he walked the land alone, thinking about how to choose the next leader. The tribe had long traditions for choosing who would guide them, and these traditions were filled with meaning rather than conflict. One of those traditions was a ceremonial challenge, not a fight, but a test of strength, wisdom, balance, and heart. The challenge showed who carried the calm spirit needed to lead others. It also reflected how responsible someone was with their power, how well they respected the tribe's customs, and how deeply they cared for the community. Finally, the chief made his decision. He would announce the ceremonial challenge once again. It had been many years since anyone attempted it because his leadership had been steady for so long. But now, it felt like the right moment. Someone needed to rise and prepare for the tribe's future. When the sun was high, he gathered the people. They came together in a wide circle, the ground smooth beneath their feet. Children sat cross-legged in the front, while adults gathered behind them with quiet curiosity. Chumana stood to the right of her father, her long dark hair blowing gently in the wind. Nalan stood on his left, her eyes calm and observant. Both daughters exchanged a quick, knowing look. They felt that something important was about to happen. Chief DeSoto Hay lifted his hand for silence. The wind eased, and the people waited. He spoke slowly, his voice deep but gentle. He explained that the time had come to choose someone who could walk into the future with strong steps. He reminded them that leadership was not about controlling others, it was about guiding them with fairness, listening to their needs, and protecting harmony within the tribe. To find such a person, he would open the ceremonial challenge to anyone who wished to attempt it. The announcement brought soft murmurs across the group. People had expected change, but they did not know it would come so soon. Still, they respected the chief's wisdom. If he believed the time was right, then the community trusted him. Then he made another announcement, one that surprised even his daughters. With quiet care, he added that whoever completed the challenge with honor and showed true leadership could also seek the right to join their family one day, but only if Chumana or Nalan agreed. They were free women with their own voices, and they would choose for themselves. The chief's offer was symbolic, a gesture of trust. It showed that he believed a future leader would need a strong partnership with those closest to him. Some members of the tribe nodded with understanding. For them, the chief was not giving away his daughters but offering the chance for unity and connection. Others simply admired the trust he placed in the ceremony. Meanwhile, Chumana and Nalan stayed calm, showing no sign of discomfort. They knew their father did this out of love, believing that a leader should respect not only the tribe, but also the women who shaped its future. Even so, they understood something else. The outside world would misunderstand this tradition completely. Far from their land, in small frontier towns and camps, People already enjoyed making stories larger than they were. They changed details for excitement, often ignoring truth. Word spread quickly whenever something sounded dramatic. And so, by the time the chief's declaration reached the nearest settlements, it had already twisted into something far less accurate. In those places, travelers claimed that the Apache chief would give his daughters away to anyone who beat him in a deadly test. They ignored the fact that it was a peaceful ceremony. They ignored the daughters' right to choose. The entire meaning behind the tradition vanished in the rush to create a sensational story. Within days, groups of adventurers, wanderers, and curious newcomers spoke about the challenge with excitement. Some imagined it as a grand contest. Others thought of the chief as some kind of undefeatable warrior from old legends. Most of them had never met an Apache person, never walked the desert land, and never tried to understand the culture behind the stories they repeated. But stories have a strange way of reaching unexpected ears. One evening in a small trading post on the edge of the territory, a man named Thomas Avery overheard a group of travelers talking loudly about the chief's challenge. Thomas was a quiet man, someone who preferred listening over talking. He had worked as a frontier scout in the past, helping guide travelers safely through difficult terrain. More importantly, he had spent time learning local languages, making friends among different tribes, and helping settle misunderstandings before they grew into problems. He knew the value of communication. He knew that words could build bridges or create walls. The more he listened to the travelers' wild stories, the more concerned he became. Something did not sound right. Thomas had met enough Apache elders to know that their traditions were rarely about conflict. Instead, they were about balance, honor, and respect. The idea that the chief was offering his daughters as prizes seemed completely unlike anything Thomas had heard before, and the thought of strangers wandering into Apache lands based on confused stories worried him. Misunderstandings could grow quickly, even when no one meant harm. That night, Thomas sat alone outside the trading post, looking at the quiet sky. He felt a responsibility stirring inside him. The same feeling he had whenever he sensed that trouble might arise, simply from people not understanding each other. If the stories spreading through towns were false and he was certain they were, then someone needed to hear the truth directly from the tribe. Perhaps, he thought, if he visited the chief himself, he could help explain the situation to the townspeople and prevent bigger misunderstandings. He did not plan to take part in any challenge, nor did he have interest in impressing anyone. His only goal was to make sure respect continued between cultures. But the next chapter of the story, the part he could not yet imagine, was already unfolding. Because once a person enters another culture's world with honesty, things rarely stay simple. Traditions reveal new meanings, relationships grow, and life takes unexpected turns. Back in the Apache village, the tribe was preparing for the ceremonial challenge. Young men and women practiced balancing stones on wooden sticks or running small obstacle paths. Older members of the tribe offered advice, reminding everyone that the challenge tested more than physical skill. It examined patience, self-control, humility, and wisdom. A leader who rushed into actions without thought could guide a community into confusion. A leader who listened, even in silence, could guide a community toward peace. Chumana and Nalan watched all of this with pride. They believed strongly in their people. They also believed in choosing their own paths. They admired the ceremony because it brought out the best in everyone who took part. Though they did not know it, their lives were about to change as well, because someone unexpected, a quiet man from far away, was on his way toward their village. But for now, the desert was calm. The chief's announcement had set a path in motion, and everyone waited to see who would walk it. Thomas Avery left the small trading post early the next morning, before the sun had fully risen. The quiet sky was pale blue, and a few clouds drifted slowly in the distance. He tightened the straps on his small leather pack, checked the condition of his horse, and then began riding toward the wide stretch of land where the Apache people lived. He had traveled that path before, but each journey felt different. The land always seemed to change with the seasons, yet it kept its calm strength. As he rode, Thomas thought about the conversations he had heard the night before. The travelers had repeated the story with so much excitement, yet none of them had checked if it was true. They treated the chief's ceremony like a dramatic tale instead of a meaningful tradition. This bothered Thomas deeply. He believed that misunderstanding was one of the biggest causes of disagreement between cultures. One person could say something with respect, but another person could hear it in a completely different way. The wind grew warmer as he traveled. Dry grass brushed gently against his boots. Every now and then, he spotted small animals running between bushes or birds flying overhead. Thomas did not rush. He took his time, letting his horse walk at a steady pace while he thought about what he might say when he reached the Apache village. He knew that entering any community required respect. He had learned that a long time ago. Every group had its own customs, its own rules, its own rhythm. If a visitor stepped in without understanding, even a small action could be misunderstood. But Thomas had always been careful. He believed in listening first, speaking second. Hours passed, and as the sun moved higher, he saw familiar signs: stones arranged in a certain pattern, small pieces of cloth tied to branches, paths slightly smoother because of many footsteps. These gentle markers told him he was near. He slowed the horse, and soon came to a place where he dismounted. Walking the rest of the way was a gesture of respect. Horses were welcome, but walking showed humility. From the edge of the village, he could hear distant voices. Children laughed as they played near soft hills of sand. Women worked on baskets or pottery, talking quietly among themselves. Men were practicing for the upcoming ceremony, lifting wooden poles or balancing objects in a careful rhythm. The entire place felt peaceful, yet full of purpose. A few villagers noticed Thomas as he approached. They did not react with surprise, but with curiosity. Many recognized him from earlier visits. He was known as the quiet white man who spoke their language gently and never acted without permission. Two elders stepped forward, both kind-faced and calm. Thomas bowed slightly, greeting them in Apache, using the words he had learned with care. One of the elders nodded. "You come with respect," he said. "You may walk with us." Thomas thanked him. As they walked, he asked about the chief, wanting to know if it would be appropriate to request a meeting. The elders exchanged a thoughtful glance, then agreed to guide him. The village was busy, yet there was harmony in every movement. People worked together like parts of a single, steady heartbeat. Before long, the chief's lodge came into view. Chief Desodahe was sitting outside, speaking with a small group of tribe members. He looked calm, wise, and focused. Chumana and Nalan sat nearby, listening carefully. Both daughters were known for their intelligence and ability to think clearly in difficult moments. When the chief noticed Thomas, he lifted his hand in greeting. The gesture was warm, not distant. Thomas placed a hand over his chest, a sign of gratitude, then slowly approached. "Welcome again, Thomas Avery," the chief said in a steady voice. "You walk the land with respect." "That is remembered." Thomas bowed his head. "Thank you, Chief Desodahe. It is good to see you again." Thomas bowed his head. 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 The chief motioned for him to sit. Thomas settled on the ground with ease, keeping his posture open and humble. He took a moment before speaking, choosing his words with care. "I came because I heard stories," he began softly. "Stories about your ceremony. But the stories are not right. People outside your land are repeating things that do not match your traditions." A brief silence followed. The chief nodded slowly, as though he already expected such a development. Chumana and Nalan exchanged a quick glance. They had also heard rumors spreading among newcomers during trading days, but they had hoped the misunderstandings would fade with time. "What stories did you hear?" Nalin asked politely. Thomas explained the traveler's version of the challenge. He spoke plainly, without exaggeration. He told them that outsiders believed the ceremony was a harsh contest. They believed the daughters were seen as rewards, rather than respected individuals with their own choices. As Thomas described these rumors, the chief listened calmly, but his expression grew thoughtful. After Thomas finished speaking, a long moment passed. Chief DeSoto finally sighed. Stories change when they travel far from truth. This is not new, but it is troubling. Chumana nodded. Our ceremony is for guidance, not for drama. People misunderstand things they do not learn, Thomas agreed. That is why I came. I thought it was better to hear the truth from you. If I understand your tradition clearly, I can explain it to others in a better way. The chief's eyes warmed with appreciation. You come with a heart for peace. That is good. Few take such steps. Nolan leaned slightly forward, studying Thomas with curiosity. You wish to prevent confusion. But others may come not to listen, but to challenge. They may think the ceremony is something it is not. That is what worries me, Thomas said gently. If people come with the wrong expectations, it may lead to more misunderstanding. The chief's voice remained calm. Misunderstanding is like a shadow, it grows when light is absent. But we cannot stop others from walking their own paths. We can only stand firm in our truth. Thomas nodded again, absorbing every word. Tell me, Thomas Avery, the chief asked, why does this matter to you? You do not seek position or reward, Thomas hesitated, then answered with honesty. Because I have lived between two worlds for many years. I have seen good friendships fall apart because people listen to wrong stories instead of listening to each other. I do not want that to happen here. His answer seemed to impress the chief. Chumana's eyes softened, and Naline's expression brightened slightly. Recognizing sincerity in his tone, you may stay in our village for now, the chief said. You may learn about the ceremony. If you wish to speak to others outside our land later, you will speak with understanding. Thomas felt grateful. I will do my best, the chief nodded. But there is one more thing. Thomas Avery. If you stay, you must take part in our preparations. You must walk the same path others walk. Even if you do not seek the challenge, learning our ways means joining our rhythm. Thomas accepted without hesitation. I will do that. And so, his days in the village began. He lived in a small shelter, offered by one of the families. The mornings started early. People rose with the sun, beginning their work with calm purpose. Thomas joined in, helping carry water, learning to balance weighted poles as part of the ceremony exercises, and observing the training that tested patience more than strength. He was not the strongest participant, and he made mistakes often, but the villagers encouraged him kindly. They admired his effort. Chumana sometimes watched his practice and offered practical advice. She corrected his steps gently, showing him how to move with steadiness rather than force. Nalan, on the other hand, helped him understand the deeper meaning behind each exercise. She explained that a leader must stay balanced inside before guiding others outside. Thomas listened carefully to everything they taught. He began to feel more connected to the community, and he slowly understood the ceremony in a way no outsider ever had. The days passed peacefully. Thomas helped children with small tasks, shared stories from his travels, and learned more about Apache life. Everywhere he went, people treated him with warmth because he treated them with respect. The chief observed all this quietly, pleased by Thomas's sincere efforts. But as the days turned into a week, small hints of change drifted in from the edges of the land. A few travelers were seen walking near the village, curious, eager, and misinformed. They did not approach yet, but their presence was noticed by the scouts. The chief remained calm, but he sensed that the coming days would hold more unexpected events, and Thomas, though he did not know it yet, was slowly becoming part of a story far larger than the one he came to correct. Thomas Avery woke before sunrise each morning. The Apache village, still quiet and colored by soft dawn light, felt almost like a world made of calm breath. The air was cool and clean, gentle shadows stretched long across the sand. Thomas would step outside his shelter and pause for a moment, letting himself take in the quiet beauty around him. Every morning felt like the start of something new. He had been in the village long enough now to understand its natural rhythm. People rose early, not because they had to, but because the morning air brought a peaceful feeling that helped guide the work of the day. Children woke with sleepy eyes but bright smiles, always eager to help with small tasks. Elders walked slowly but with purpose, sharing stories or guiding the younger ones. Everything seemed connected, woven together like a single blanket of harmony. Thomas joined the community with sincerity. He helped with water gathering, learned how to prepare simple meals using traditional ingredients, and listened closely whenever someone explained the meaning of a daily practice. He respected every instruction because he understood that each small task held a deeper purpose. Soon, preparation for the ceremonial challenge grew more serious. The challenge was coming closer, and those wishing to take part needed to demonstrate qualities that went far beyond physical ability. Strength mattered, of course, but not the kind that showed power over others. It was the strength to stay calm, steady, and patient, even when tested. It was the strength to think before acting, and to respect every person involved. Thomas had not originally planned to participate in the challenge itself. But since the chief had invited him to walk the same path as the others, he trained out of respect, and slowly, without even noticing at first, he became part of the preparation group. One morning, Chumana approached him with a wooden staff. She handed it to him with a soft smile. "This is part of the training," she said. "It teaches balance and focus." Thomas took the staff carefully. It was smooth and lightweight, carved with delicate patterns that represented the 4 directions of the wind. Chumana demonstrated the exercise first. She placed the staff across her arms and balanced it with complete ease. Then she closed her eyes, maintaining her still posture as the morning breeze brushed gently across her face. "When the wind moves, do not move with it," she explained. "Your body must stay steady, even when the world around you changes." Thomas tried to imitate her, but his arms wobbled slightly. The staff tilted, and he had to catch it quickly to keep it from falling. Chumana laughed softly, not unkindly. Her laughter was light, like a bell carried on the wind. "You are improving," she said. "You only need more time." Thomas practiced again and again. Some attempts were better than others. Children watched him with amusement, cheering quietly whenever he managed to balance the staff for more than a few moments. Their small encouragements kept him motivated. Later in the day, Nalin taught him a different part of the ceremony's preparation. This one required quiet thought and inner calm. She led him to a peaceful place near the edge of the village where tall grasses swayed gently. "Sit here," she said. Thomas sat beside her. "Every leader must understand the meaning of silence," Nalin continued. "It teaches you to listen, not only with your ears, but with your heart." Thomas nodded. He already knew that listening was one of the most important skills a person could have. But Nalin explained that listening in this tradition meant more than understanding words. It meant understanding feelings, intentions, and the needs of those around you even when they were not directly spoken. For a long time, they sat quietly. The only sounds were soft breezes, rustling grass, and distant laughter of children. Thomas felt his thoughts slow down. His breathing became deeper. He understood why this practice mattered. A leader needed a peaceful heart so they could make fair decisions. As the days passed, Thomas became more connected to the villagers. Many respected him for his willingness to learn and his quiet, humble nature. Even those who were unsure about him at first gradually warmed to him. He helped repair baskets, carried firewood, and even played with the younger children when they asked him to join their small games. The chief watched from a distance, observing Thomas's progress with thoughtful eyes. He did not push him or correct him. Instead, he allowed Thomas to discover the meaning of each practice through experience. One evening, as the sun set in soft orange light, Chief DeSotohe invited Thomas to walk with him to a small hill just outside the village. The two walked side by side in comfortable silence. When they reached the hilltop, the chief sat down and motioned for Thomas to do the same. "You have learned much," the chief said slowly. Thomas looked at him with full attention. "The ceremony is not just a test," the chief continued. "It is a door. It opens the path toward deeper connection with our people. If you choose to take part, you must understand what it means." Thomas nodded, waiting. "Leadership," the chief said. is not a prize. It is a responsibility that carries the weight of many hearts. Anyone who stands before others must stand with humility. Anyone who guides others must first guide themselves. The chief's words settled deeply into Thomas's thoughts. I do not expect you to win. The chief added kindly, winning is not the purpose. The purpose is to show your intentions clearly. When a person participates with honesty, they strengthen their bond with the community. Thomas took a quiet breath. I want to show respect, he said softly. That is the only truth I can offer. The chief nodded approvingly. Then walk the ceremony path. Let it teach you what it can. Quote, from that day, Thomas approached the training with even greater focus. He understood that the ceremony was not competitive. It was symbolic. It allowed the tribe to see a person's character and heart through simple, peaceful tasks. Some of the challenges included balancing stones while walking slowly, weaving thin fibers without breaking them, guiding another person blindfolded through a smooth path, carrying water without spilling a drop, answering thoughtful questions asked by elders. None of these tasks were tests of force. They were tests of patience, awareness, and gentleness. Thomas practiced each one with dedication. He failed many times, but every failure taught him something important. His confidence grew, but not in an arrogant way. He simply felt more grounded, more connected to himself and the people around him. Chumana and Nalan often joined him. They corrected his steps, shared stories about past leaders, and helped him understand how their tribe viewed responsibility. Sometimes they laughed together when Thomas made funny mistakes, and sometimes they shared quiet moments of reflection as the stars appeared above. The days leading to the ceremony were peaceful but filled with steady preparation. Meanwhile, the scouts occasionally reported seeing small groups of outsiders near the edges of the land, mostly curious travelers who had heard the twisted version of the story. They watched from afar, unsure of whether they should approach. The chief remained calm. They will come when the time is right, he said. When they see our ways, perhaps they will understand more clearly. At the same time, Thomas felt a gentle tension inside him. Not fear, but awareness. He sensed that the coming ceremony would reveal more than just skill. It would reveal truth. Truth about himself and truth about how the outside world might react when misunderstanding met reality. One afternoon, as the sky glowed soft gold, Thomas practiced balancing a bowl of water on a wooden tray. He walked slowly around the training area, placing each foot carefully on the ground. Chumana watched, impressed by his growing steadiness. You have learned much, she said. Thomas smiled slightly. I had good teachers. Nalan joined them, carrying a woven basket. Do you feel ready for the ceremony? Thomas paused. I don't know if ready is the right word. But I feel calm. That is enough, Nalan said gently. Calm is the heart of readiness. The evening before the ceremony, the entire village gathered for a peaceful meal. There was laughter, storytelling, and a warm sense of togetherness. Thomas sat with the chief's family, feeling honored to be included. Toward the end of the meal, Chief DeSodahay stood and addressed the group. Tomorrow, he said warmly, we begin a ceremony that our ancestors created. It reminds us of who we are and who we hope to become. Those who walk the path do so not to prove greatness, but to show spirit. We honor every person who takes part. Thomas felt the weight of the moment wash over him. Not heavy, just meaningful. As stars filled the night sky, the village slowly settled into rest. Thomas lay awake for a while, listening to the soft sounds of the desert. He felt peaceful but aware that the next day would bring important change. The ceremony would begin at sunrise, and Thomas did not yet know that the moment he stepped onto the ceremonial path, his journey and the village's future would take an unexpected turn. The morning of the ceremony arrived with a soft glow spreading across the sky. The desert air felt fresh, as if the world had taken a long, calm breath before beginning something important. The Apache village was already awake. People moved quietly, preparing the ceremonial area with care and respect. The ground was swept smooth, colorful woven blankets were placed in thoughtful patterns, and a small circle of stones marked the center where the ceremony would begin. Thomas stood near the edge of the village, watching the scene unfold with a sense of steady calm. He felt different than when he first arrived. The days of training had not only strengthened his balance or patience, but also opened his heart to deeper understanding. He felt connected not just as a visitor, but as someone who had been welcomed into a living tradition. Chumana approached him first, carrying a thin strip of cloth embroidered with simple designs. She tied it gently around his wrist. "This shows you walk the ceremonial path with respect," she said softly. Thomas nodded gratefully. "Thank you for guiding me." Nalin joined them, her expression warm. "The ceremony is not a test you pass or fail. It is a moment for understanding. Walk it with an open heart." Thomas smiled. "I will." As the sun rose higher, the chief stepped into the center of the ceremonial area. His presence brought a natural quiet to the crowd. He stood tall, but peaceful, like someone who held deep wisdom and never rushed a single word. "Today," Chief DeSoto said gently, "we honor our ancestors by walking a path of calm, patience, and understanding. This ceremony shows who carries balance in their heart. All who take part walk with courage. Not the courage to fight, but the courage to be honest." The people nodded with quiet agreement. The ceremony had begun. Thomas joined the other participants, a small group of men and women from the tribe, each ready to show their inner strength. They stood side by side, not as rivals but as companions on the same path. The first part of the ceremony involved balancing stones. Each participant was given a smooth, rounded stone to place on a wooden board. They had to walk carefully around the circle without letting the stone fall. Thomas breathed deeply, remembering Chumana's teaching. He moved with slow, steady steps. The stone wobbled once, but he calmed himself and regained control. When he completed the circle, small smiles appeared among the watching villagers. The second part involved weaving. Each participant sat quietly and wove thin strands of fiber into a small pattern. It required focus and gentle hands. Nalin's lessons helped Thomas keep his movements smooth. He completed his piece not perfect, but thoughtful and neat. A few children near him whispered encouragement, which made him smile. Next came guiding another person while blindfolded. This part symbolized trust and careful leadership. Thomas was paired with a young tribesman who blindfolded him gently. Thomas walked slowly, listening to the sound of his companion's voice and the soft feel of the ground beneath his feet. He guided the young man through the small pathway with steady, cautious steps. When they reached the end, both shared a warm nod of appreciation. Each task carried meaning. Each step showed patience instead of pressure. And Thomas realized that the ceremony was not about proving anything, it was about creating understanding between hearts. Finally, the participants sat before a group of elders who asked quiet, thoughtful questions. The elders did not look for perfect answers. They looked for honesty. "Why do you walk this path?" one elder asked Thomas. "Because understanding brings peace," Thomas answered softly. "I want to honor your tradition with a respectful heart," another elder asked. "What does leadership mean to you?" Thomas paused, choosing his words. "Leadership means listening. It means caring for others more than yourself. And it means guiding gently, never forcing." The elders exchanged approving glances. Thomas felt a peaceful warmth inside him. When the tasks were complete, the chief stepped forward again. His expression was thoughtful, but calm. He looked at each participant with kindness. "You have all walked the path with respect," he said. "You have shown patience, calm spirit, and sincerity. These are the qualities that guide a community." The village listened quietly as the chief continued. "Some came today with the hope of leading. Others came to understand. All of you honored the tradition." His eyes then rested on Thomas. "And one among you came not to seek reward or position, but to learn." His steps were steady. His spirit was calm. His intentions were honest. Such qualities are rare. Thomas felt heat rise to his cheeks. He did not expect such words. Chumana and Nalin watched him with warm pride, not admiration for victory, but appreciation for sincerity. The chief lifted his hand gently. Thomas Avery did not walk this path to win or to impress. he walked it to understand. And in doing so, he showed the heart of a leader, not a leader of our people, but a leader of truth and peace. Soft murmurs of approval spread through the crowd. Then the chief continued with clarity. The ceremony has shown us that Thomas's presence here is a blessing to our community. But the tradition of marriage, he paused, is not a reward taken through challenge. It is a personal choice, and my daughters will always choose their own future. Chumana and Nalan both nodded firmly. Their eyes showed respect for their father and their own independence. Thomas felt relieved that the chief's earlier statement had been fully clarified. Everyone understood now that the tradition was about unity, not possession. The chief turned to the whole village. We honor Thomas Avery today as a friend of our people. He walks with wisdom and brings understanding between our worlds. The villagers smiled warmly. Children clapped gently. Thomas felt deeply moved. He had come only to correct misunderstandings, but he now stood as a bridge between cultures. After the ceremony ended, the village celebrated with a peaceful gathering. Music made from wooden flutes drifted through the air. People shared food, stories, and gentle laughter. Thomas sat with the chief's family, eating roasted corn and dried fruit, while listening to joyful conversations around him. Chumana sat beside him. "You walked the ceremony well," she said. "Not perfectly, but with heart." Thomas laughed lightly. "Most of the time, I was trying not to drop anything. That is part of the ceremony," she said. "We all drop things sometimes. What matters is how we continue." Nalan joined them. "You helped us show the truth of our tradition. For that, we are grateful." Thomas shook his head gently. "You welcomed me. I only tried to honor that." The chief approached, placing a gentle hand on Thomas's shoulder. "You have done more than you know," he said softly. "You will help guide others toward understanding." Later that evening, as the sky turned deep blue and stars appeared like small silver sparks, Thomas found a quiet place at the edge of the village. The land stretched far beyond the horizon. Peaceful and open, he thought about everything that had happened. How he had come to prevent misunderstanding. How he had been welcomed. How he had learned. And how he now carried a deeper sense of connection. Chumana and Nalan walked up beside him, their presence gentle. "You will leave soon," Nalan said kindly, not as a question, but as an understanding. Thomas nodded. "Yes. The towns outside this land still hold stories that need correction. I want to help people see the truth." Chumana folded her arms thoughtfully. "Then, walk with honesty. Speak with respect. That is what the ceremony teaches." Thomas smiled. "I will." They stood in peaceful silence for a moment, watching the night sky stretch endlessly. When Thomas finally left the next morning, the entire village gathered to wish him well. The chief offered him a small woven cloth, symbolizing friendship. Chumana gave him a smooth stone for balance. Nalan offered a feather representing clarity. Thomas accepted each gift with gratitude. As he rode away, he looked back one last time. The village stood calm and bright in the morning sun. The people watched with warm eyes, knowing that this was not an ending, but a beginning of greater understanding between different worlds. Thomas carried the wisdom of the ceremony with him, ready to share it wherever misunderstanding tried to grow. And the Apache village remained strong, peaceful, and united, guided by truth, respect, and the calm spirit of its people.